So the Detroit Lions have a decision to make. They pick 6th overall in the draft, and some people have wondered, should they go after quarterback or should they stick with Jared Goff? So to make that decision, first we have to evaluate Jared Goff, where he's at, and how much is he getting paid, how much does he help his team, and can they win a Super Bowl with Jared Goff? Because that, at the end of the day, is the discussion the Lions should be asking themselves. So let's get into it. Let's start off here. These are Jared Goff's Pro Football Focus grades for every season he has been in the NFL. So, obviously in 2016, he had that disastrous Jeff Fisher year, but since then has actually been very consistent. In his 6 seasons, he's been between 71 and 75 of a grade, with the 2 exceptions being in 2018 when he had his career year, and in 2021 when he had his worst year. Now, I'm going to say in 2021, it was a new team, new system, all that stuff. That's probably why he had a bit of a down year. I'm also willing to say in 2018, he had a lot of talent around him, probably made it easier for him to have that great year, and the book wasn't fully out on what he could do and what he couldn't do just quite yet. Personally, if I had to predict using this, what would his grade be in 2023? I would probably predict around a 72 grade because that tends to be where he sits at. That feels reasonable to me to suggest. But again, PFF grades, not everybody's thing. What if it's not your thing? Well, then what other things should we look at? Well, I compiled a couple of stats that I like. These are the 3 stats: Pro Football Focus grade, passer rating, and EPA per play, and that's where he ranked in each of those categories. His PFF grade was 20th best in the league out of 41 eligible players, so that's not particularly great, but the passer rating and EPA per play were, so the team stats were very good, right? These are results-based stats, which the quarterback does have the biggest impact in those stats, but still, it's, very impressive, but also there's also surrounding things. I mean, I think we all agree that if one quarterback is in a terrible situation, another quarterback is in a great situation, and they have the same passer rating, then you'd rather have the guy in a terrible situation. That's kind of how we typically view that stuff. There's no denying Goff has been in a really good situation, and this has helped with his passer rating and his EPA, which is estimated points added per play. It's kind of an advanced stat, but a good one, but again, is still a team stat in a sense, right? But there's several ways you could look at this. You could definitely look at this as a positive. I think the main question that we're going to ask ourselves once we get into film is, how much credit does Goff deserve for his passer rating and for his EPA, and how much is it just a team thing? If you look at Goff's contract here, so Jared Goff, listen, this is something you have to mention. Goff is getting paid $30 million a year, and that is an important aspect of all of this. If Jared Goff were to be cut right now, you'd only save about $16 million. So you're not saving the full $30 million. He still would have $15 million in dead cap if you got rid of him. Whereas if you keep him for a year and then cut him, well, you're only going to be having $5 million in dead cap. So you could view this as a situation to get a quarterback if you choose to. Let's just say, for hypothetical, before we give our opinions on how good we think Goff is, if we think Goff is a good quarterback but isn't going to get you over the hump, well, then getting a quarterback who has high upside and maybe could be a quarterback who can get you over the hump, you could afford to do it, because by the rookie's quarterback's second season, you could then get rid of Goff for minimal dead cap. If it was a situation where he's guaranteed $30 million a year for the next 4 years, you couldn't really move off of the contract. But in this scenario, if you want to, it's available. So let's get into the film now, and let's talk about the good and bad of Jared Goff. And it's mostly solid. Like, it's mostly not great or bad. It's usually kind of somewhere in the middle. Stuff like this, which is a pretty simple play. But the thing about Goff is he does the simple stuff, and he makes the simple stuff look simple. And that's not what every quarterback does. Plenty of quarterbacks can struggle with this stuff, and one of the, I think, positives of Goff is that he does not struggle with this stuff. It's a pretty simple play, right? Zone coverage, you have a receiver who's going to cut right underneath one of the corner's zones, and so hopefully the corner will be too far deep and he can get open. Also, there's a play action, which could get the players who are in charge of covering over the middle to move further in. Watch how when Goff takes the snap, he runs this play action and gets to this point where, At this point, is it about to get open? It looks good. The corner has his hips turned towards the middle of the field, so Goff feels pretty comfortable about making this throw. And, Goff, definitely someone who, when the concept is working and when he's in a good situation, tends to, have a high batting average in these spots. Watch him be able to make this throw, and they are able to pick up a nice little chunk play right there. And this is what Goff does consistently, is when he has a window to make the throw, he makes the throw. When his first read is open, he hits his first read, right? And some people will view that as an insult, but I really don't mean it as one at all. There's a lot of value in guys who can do that, and even there's a lot of good quarterbacks in the NFL who aren't great at doing that stuff, so the fact that he is definitely a benefit. Now, heading over here, there's, I think, no denying that there were definitely some moments where, it was easy for Goff, partially because of the value of Amon-Ra St. Brown, or even just the coaching in general. I thought a lot of good play calling. Something like this, it's man coverage, and there's a lot of traffic going on in front. That's going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown's route, though, the one you see on the screen. Look at how when this play begins, you do see that Amon-Ra St. Brown is wide open because Washington screwed up here. It was a blunder. You have, two players covering one Lion, and then you have Amon-Ra St. Brown completely wide open over the middle. This was largely set up due to all the traffic going, in one area, caused confusion, which is something the Lions definitely do a good job of doing, is confusing their opponent. Goff does the right thing, hits St. Brown, which again was his first read on that one, and then St. Brown does the rest of the work, picks up, over 50 yards on that play. There were plenty of plays like this where Goff didn't do a ton, but the offense just worked really well. And again, at the end of the day, the goal is to have a great offense. If you have a great offense, then you're good, so maybe you don't care so much, but that is definitely what I saw. I also think stuff like this, the reality is, Goff is someone who gives his receivers chances. For better or worse, sometimes it's throwing a pick to Stephon Gilmore at the end of the Super Bowl, but sometimes it's stuff like this, where it's man coverage across the board. Watch how when this play begins, there is some pressure, but Goff actually navigates it pretty nicely. Again, Goff not known for his, mobility, but in this scenario, he's doing a good job of giving himself a little bit of extra time to throw. And now, Amon-Ra St. Brown, one-on-one in the end zone. The reality is, Goff kind of just says, I'm going to throw it to you because you're Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'm going to give you a chance. As you see, that's exactly what Goff does, and it works out. They do get a touchdown on that play, and these are the things that Goff is certainly capable of. So it's not like he can't make good plays. It's not like he can't go above and beyond. That's not what he's known for. He's not known for being a playmaker. He's known for being a game manager type, for sure, but he can occasionally have the playmaker type, thing too, although, again, that's not what you pay him for. So should the Lions move off of Jared Goff? I actually think it's a really difficult conversation to have. Because the reality is, I think with Jared Goff, he does give you probably the best odds of making the playoffs this year. So I don't think it would make a ton of sense to just straight up get rid of him, even though I have said in the past I thought it would make sense. I can kind of see why. Keep him on the roster, trust that he can just be a solid quarterback. Maybe he's a bit overpaid right now, but when you think about you're only going to save $15 million by cutting him. Can you get a quarterback who can perform better than him with that $15 million? Probably not. So should you move off him? I think no. Keep him on the roster for another year at this point. The question that I find more interesting is, do you draft a quarterback? Do you take someone to potentially, have the upside? If you love a prospect and he's there at 6, I don't think it's crazy to do. I wouldn't hate that decision. I'm not sure I would rush to do it if I'm the Lions, but I don't think you should avoid it either necessarily, because the last thing you want is for next year Goff to kind of look, solid but not great again. You kind of see that your ceiling is only so high with Goff, and then Anthony Richardson, who was selected at 7 to the Raiders, ends up looking awesome, and now you feel stupid. Again, there's a bad worst-case scenario regardless, right? Anything could go wrong, and getting a good player of number 6 is still going to be very valuable if you're trying to go on a run this year, which I assume that they are, given the state of that division right now and the state of their roster right now, the Lions roster. But should they go after a quarterback? No. They shouldn't go after a quarterback. They shouldn't say, we need a quarterback this offseason. Let's figure out what to do. They're not at that point. But should they be open to getting a quarterback if the opportunity presents itself? In my opinion, absolutely. But that's what I think. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.